So welcome to the NIEM Advanced Technical Concepts presentation. Now this presentation is actually in 5 parts. It's rather long because there are a lot of advanced technical concepts within the context of the NIEM, and we need to cover them all. So this is the first part, part 1 of 5. And in this section we're going to talk about 2 different main topics. First we're going to talk about NIEM Conformance, what it is, and then we're going to talk about an introduction to NIEM technical architecture. So we'll get our introduction to the technical architecture, which will then lead to more specific topics in the other sections. So what do we mean by conformance vis-a-vis the NIEM? Well, by conformance we mean the adherence or conforming to a bunch of predefined rules and guidelines. Those guidelines and rules tell you how to work with the NIEM. So who defines those? Well, they're defined by the NIEM Technical Architecture Committee, the NTAC. And then the NTAC funnels that through the PMO, the Program Management Office, who gives their final approval. But the NIEM Technical Architecture Committee is really a room full of geeky people who work out these different rules. And then the rules themselves are outlined, well, not really outlined, they're actually in gory detail in the NIEM Naming and Design Rules, the NDR. So the NDR is a rule book. It's a pretty thick rule book. It's not a pleasant read, but it is a rule book that outlines the rules for working with the NIEM. It defines the standards and guidelines for developing NIEM conformance schemas, well as a lot of other things. So let's take a look at some of them. The NIEM Naming and Design Rules actually covers a wide variety of different things about which you can make rules. It talks about how to use XML schema within the context of the NIEM. XML schema has a lot of things that it can do, but the NIEM doesn't use every feature of XML schema. Furthermore, the NIEM has some constraints on how you use XML schema within the context of the NIEM. So the NDR tells you how to do that. It tells you how to model and structure NIEM conformance schemas. Again, you can do a lot of stuff in XML schema, but in order to do it within the context of the NIEM, there are rules for how to structure all of that. You also learn from the NDR how to create NIEM conformant instance documents, the actual payload documents that get shuttled back and forth. And those have to conform to the NIEM as well, and you find that out in the NDR. The NDR tells you how to name NIEM conformant elements and types. You can't just call things whatever you want. There's a naming standard to be followed, and that's detailed in the NDR. The NDR also tells you how you can extend the NIEM. The NIEM's huge, but it doesn't contain everything, so you need to be able to add your own elements and types to the NIEM, following the naming rules in the bullet above. And then finally, the NDR tells you how to integrate other standards into the NIEM. There are other standards out there. They're important standards. They may be standards that fit your needs better than the NIEM. They may be standards that you're required to use for a variety of different reasons. And the NIEM has methods for allowing you to take those external standards and use them along with things from the NIEM. And again, the NDR tells you how to do that. So just to wrap up NIEM conformance, it applies to XML instance documents themselves, the actual payload documents that get shuttled around. It applies to individual IEPD schemas, so the schemas inside the information exchange package documentation, they're conformant to the NIEM as well. And it applies to the IEPD itself, so there are rules about which schemas go where that apply to the IEPD as a whole. So overall, NIEM conformance is defined by the NIEM Naming and Design Rules, which is a lot of technical rules for how these things work, along with an IEPD specification, which is more about the IEPD wrapper around the schemas that the NDR tells you how to build. So what's the future of conformance? Well, in short, more specifications. Yeah, actually, it's true, though. There are more specifications coming. For example, the NTAC is working on specifications for allowing you to specify business rules that go beyond what XML schema can handle. So you'll be able to specify very complex business rules and be able to verify and validate those within exchanges, and the methods for doing so are going to be part of a specification that's upcoming. You'll also be able to do things like do sophisticated self-declaration of how conformant your work is. Right now, if you want to say your work's conformant, it's a true or false. Either you are or you aren't. But we're going to have ways to let you define for yourself just how conformant you are, and that's going to be really flexible as well. And that'll mean, yes, another specification. So there are more sophisticated ways of conforming to the NIEM that are coming down the pipe, but they will come at the cost of more specifications for you to learn.